Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the ECM podcast. I'm Caroline Fontagneux, and I'm very happy to host this series that will take you behind the scenes of new music on ECM Records. In this new episode, I'm meeting over Zoom with Ziv Ravitz and Yonathan Avishai, two artists from Avishai Cohen's quartet, to talk about their new album, Ashes to Gold. We talked about the art of Kintsugi, the choice of hope and light, and storytelling. We are here to celebrate the release of your new album, Ashes to Gold. I'm saying your new album. It's Avishai Cohen's project, but you as a quartet are very much one entity as well, and we're definitely going to talk about it. But we're here to celebrate this release, and we're here to talk about your collaborator, Avishai Cohen. And yeah, Avishai and I both agreed that it would be interesting to have your perspective on this project, both of you, Yonathan Avishai, and you, Ziv Ravitz. So let's start with the beginning. Do you remember when you both started working with Avishai? Yonathan.
I mean, it has different chapters because it's like a very old friendship and collaboration. But I started playing in his own project on a regular basis when we did his first ECM release, which is
Into the Silence.
Yes, indeed, yeah. So this is the first time I joined this process without knowing, by the way, that it's going to be a band or there are going to be other albums. For me, it was just Avishai calling me to make an album. So,
But it's not the first time you play together. First of all, you know each other
no,
since you were 15
yeah,
or something like that.
yeah, we have a very long history, but this is the most. I mean, we played together in a band called Third World Love, which was maybe the first really intense and close collaboration. We always made music in one way or another, but the quartet is definitely the longest and most significant experience. I mean, for me, anyway.
I joined a little bit later in a very strange way, but I subbed for Nashit Waits on the last gig of a 3 weeks tour in Flagey in Brussels,
Brussels.
full house. And
For the music of Cross My Palm, or for the music of Into the Silence?
into the
Okay.
It was
silence.
still Into the Silence.
Well, actually, they were Into the Silence, but no, this was after. But it was Into the Silence, and I was preparing because I know Avishai from New York for a long time. He played on my album before I played in his, and I knew him from New York. I was in the Brit of his son. We know each other for a long time. We have like friendship relationship for a long time. And then he called me to do this one-off gig. And I said, cool, yeah. But I love that album so much. I was so prepared. I printed all the charts. I did markers on the charts. And then
Did you know the album before he called you?
No, I knew the album, but I did not. I listened to it just as a listener, not as the one that's gonna play it. It's different. You treat the music differently. And so I arrived. He looked at me with all these charts. He's like, "Wow, amazing!" He took all the charts and he said, "Like, you don't need them." I said, "Like, what?" I said, I need them to play." He said, "Like, yeah. You are here to play Ziv Ravitz. So please don't look at the charts and play whatever you want." And after this gig, it was the beginning of like our time together. And because after that, he called me for more, and then the quartet became so solidified in a way that it became so meaningful for all of us as a quartet. It became such a strong family and an entity that now this is the perspective we have for every other music we have in our life. It's the prism through how we see the rest of all the bands we're playing in. It's like all is in comparison to that quartet.
And everyone's failing. Everyone else is failing.
Not failing, it's just so different.
Yeah.
It's like a
I mean,
compare.
it's hard. The bar is really high if you're just like comparing every band you're playing with a band of people that you know for 25 years that are like brothers to you, and it's just like then you need to compare it to like a random band that you're playing with. It's super hard for the other bands.
It's yeah, it puts everything in a strange context. But
Mhm.
even bands that I played with, like I played for 10 years with Shy, and it was a very meaningful band to me, and I enjoyed it tremendously. But the level of what we do in this quartet is so unique. I've never experienced anything like this in my life.
Yeah,
And we all unanimously, the four of us, feeling the same way.
yeah.
It's for all of us, it's like it's sometimes we finish a concert and we look at each other, it's like, what just happened?
Ashes to Gold is following the Naked Truth that has kind of the same form in terms of just a suite of stories and paintings that don't necessarily have a title, and
Mhm.
that those two albums have that in common, and it's really like a suite. It's a whole story. It's an arch. But I think that the process of creation was a little different, Yonathan, because usually he would bring the music into the studio, and um, you would all together, because you know each other so well, improvise around the music. But here you were a little bit more involved in the writing, I think.
To be honest, not really. We rehearsed it a little bit before. I mean, the process is not very long usually. Avishai brings the music a little bit before, not very long time of preparation. And then we just played, maybe for the very last album, but this is a very personal feeling. We were maybe involved in a different way, which I'm not sure how to describe.
I mean, we cannot not talk about what's going on in the world, right? So without going too far into this, it's obviously something that we have to mention because it was very specific, and you got into the studio in November last year. Like
Yes, that's true. That's
that was
true.
a
I did.
very, and it still is
Yeah.
a very specific time in the world, and I'm sure that it was influencing the music and the time in the studio very specifically.
Actually, you're right. Maybe this element actually defines the kind of collective experience that we had, maybe making this music, because I think that every album that Avishai was doing in the past few years was very much related into very important moments in his life.
Yeah,
Yeah, every time there was something, whether it's said or we know it or it's inside or
yeah,
in the air. I think it's always a moment in his, I mean, personal life. And maybe, as you said, the fact that it happened through these hard times that where we were all concerned made this kind of collective blues, into this music. I mean, I don't
yeah,
know how
yeah.
Ziv feels about it, but maybe
I
yeah,
mean,
this
the album in Naked Truth, there was less. I mean, we got the music about few days before the studio. The studio was the second time we played the music.
yeah, right. And with this one, we actually played. You're
With
right.
this one,
We did concerts.
we did
Yeah,
concert
yeah,
before this,
yeah.
and
You're right.
there was more involvement in because the heaviness of the topic of why we are doing it, why it's called Ashes to Gold, why
Mhm.
um, Avishai had a different set of music, to be honest. And it's then he after what happened on the 7th of October, everything changed, and he under that's what he says. It tells it in concerts. Under missiles and war, he wrote new set of music, and he brought it in hope for peace, basically. It's this is we all just want peace. That's the only thing we want. Everybody will come back home, and there will be peace, stopping the war, and we just find some common ground and stop the fighting. But
Yeah.
it's he came with that energy to the music, and then when we came to the studio, so we had to be a little bit more delicate with how we approach, because it suddenly like felt like a very important topics. We are talking about something very important. We have to be very precise then. So it made us play differently. And when you listen to the album, and if you know that it was played from the perspective of war, then you hear all the element of war, the marching into the field, the bombs, the crying for helps of moms, the crying, like all of this, you hear everything.
Yeah.
And music is the one thing that is make fixing everything. That's why it's ashes to gold. It's based on Kintsugi, which is the art form of the Japanese art form of fixing a broken vase with gold, with threads of gold.
It's not only a message of peace, it's also a message of hope. Like it's very hopeful because I agree that the music is heavy and is colored by everything that's going on in the world right now, everywhere. But at the same time, there's something very luminous, very light, very
Yeah, totally agree.
hopeful that really fits this title too, where sometimes we have titles for tracks and sometimes it helps giving a direction for the listener to how
Mm,
to feel when I'm gonna listen to a track that says my baby's first steps. We kind of expect something being very joyful or very sad or very X or Y. But when we don't have titles, we don't have other choice than just like let the music speak to us, right? And there's something with Ashes to Gold, where obviously this title means a lot, but there's something in the spirit of the music that is full of hope and that really like a promise also for a brighter future. And I'm sure that it's also how you felt in the studio. I mean, again, November 2023, that was just a very specific time, but we can feel that. So that worked. That's important.
this music, and Avishai, who's the person who he's the storyteller. We're telling the stories with him, but he brings a certain intention. And first of all, he has things to say, which I think is the most important thing. He has things to say, you know. So then come the knowledge and talent and many things, but he has a message, you know, whether it has words or it's something which is more spiritual and hidden. So, and he's very clear. So once the band the person you're following has something to say, he's clear. Same time, he's brilliant. He's talented. He's a virtuoso to a like crazy in a crazy way. All this together, I think, makes some kind of unity where the questions of good, bad, successful, less successful are become less relevant or
Yeah.
I mean from the inside maybe the audience experience beautiful concerts and other that are less successful, but I think
When it comes to the voice as a group, it's
yeah,
always there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That
think
makes
there's something. I mean, we can talk about it for hours. I think, and we talk even between us. but there's some kind of balance in this specific quartet between the music, the intention, the four individuals that create this quartet that has a very unique and rich balance. Uh, and it's just, sometimes it's right. And Avishai brought this whole thing together, whether it's the music or the four of us. So it's like a really, yeah, successful dish.
You both have a specific relationship to the label because obviously you're part of this quartet, but Jonathan, you recorded things under your own name. Also,
Mm.
for ECM, Ziv, you're in Dominic Miller Band, and there's history with ECM. Can you both tell me a little bit about your relationship with the label?
We all know, or whoever listens, how much this label is meaningful in the history of music in general, and in particular in the kind of music that we play, that we're trying to make. So, just being a little bit a part of it is I feel very fortunate, to be a part of the label, and then more specifically, the few times I had the opportunity to work with Manfred and other people in the team that are really extremely lovely and caring. And so just as a like a kid, I'm not a kid anymore, but who dreams about music, just to touch, to have any kind of interaction with this legacy is kind of still unbelievable.
Do you remember
Uh,
your first ECM album?
that I listened to.
Yeah.
I can't remember the very first, and I guess there were albums that I didn't really know that it's ECM. It was kind of a mix because I
Mm.
guess I was listening to Keith Jarrett without really thinking that it's ECM. But I have very specific like artist, Paul Blaze, Open to Love, or I'm a huge Art Ensemble of Chicago fan. So if the Art Ensemble albums released on ECM, or Don Cherry, Codona, these are like albums that really changed my life. And I guess we all have a very long list of these kind of albums that yeah, that's changed many things in us. And then I mean, for me, being in the studio and working with Manfred was a very rich experience. I learned a lot, actually, really. I'm still in a way using elements on some ways that are inspired by the way he treats the process of recording.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel extremely fortunate to be a part of this.
I was one of those guys who had a subscription for ECM. When I was young, when I was a teenager, I was so in love with the sound of the label that I signed up for these 10 CDs a month, or
Oh,
10 CDs a year or something. I don't remember. I come from a very
that's
poor family.
great.
So I
Wow.
would get all these like really esoteric CDs and some amazing CDs and some but I was obsessed with the sound. I remember the album who got me into free music, Star, is an album called Star with Miroslav Vitos, Peter Esking, and Jan Garbarek. And like I remember listening to this, like, what am I hearing here? It was on cassette. This one I had on cassette. It was one of the dreams that I hope like when I was a kid. I was like, I hope I will get to meet the people in this label. And when I met Manfred for the first time, I actually told him that, and he said he made the joke. Ah, it was you. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. No, but I was very impressed by the way he was dealing with things, and even dealing with beyond the quartet and the stuff with Dominique, and even the stuff with Big Vicious, with a rock band. How does a guy who did new classical music and avant-garde music and jazz music, and like suddenly does a rock? How many rock albums there are on the label of ECM? Not a lot.
A lot, yeah.
And he was so in the process, and so like as if he was producing only rock album in his whole life.
This is actually, this was amazing to me. I mean, besides of the fact that he really, okay, produced all these
Hmm.
legendary albums, but the kind of excitement that he comes with to the studio. I remember recording with my trio, we're not very famous musicians, we're not like out there, just trio from France, whatever. And the way Yoni Zenik is the bass player, and sometimes you would like be so excited about the bass line, and like Yoni would look at him like this is the guy who produced, like all Dave Holland. I mean, and I know that, yeah, just excitement, the level of excitement coming to the studio after doing these thousands, I think, of albums. It's kind of amazing, actually,
Yeah.
you know.
And I mean, it connects also to what you were saying about Avishai. We're talking about someone who's not in this conversation, so, but genuine and humility and being genuine in the approach of the art, really. That's something that both Avishai and Manfred Eicher have in common, and that you also have. And it's something that defines, I think, also a lot of ECM artists, and that's beautiful. Ziv Ravitz and Yonathan Avishai about Avishai Cohen Quartet's new album, Ashes to Gold. Thank you for joining, choosing, and listening to our ECM podcast. I'm Caroline Fontagneux, and I look forward to sharing more music with you in the next episode.